Welcome to the Spoon Podcast, where we talk to the builders and makers on the front lines of the food tech revolution. I'm your host, Michael Wolf. In this episode, I talk with Babette Pepaj, the CEO of BakeBot and Bakespace, and she's been doing this for almost 20 years. She started Bakespace way back in the 2006, 2007 timeframe, and that was around the time I was going to work for a big Silicon Valley tech blog, and so we had kind of similar journeys to that early web, and she had started basically creating the Bakespace when she noticed recipe bloggers were starting to become a thing. And so it was a really interesting conversation to talk with her about how things have changed since the rise of video influencers and YouTube and TikTok, and all that has become a major way in which people present food suggestions and recipes. And so that was fun. We also talk about why she decided to build an AI assistant called BakeBot when she has so many humans who are creating content for her platform, why she decided to embrace AI in the way that she did. And so it was a really interesting conversation. I think you'll enjoy it. If you haven't already got your ticket for Smart Kitchen Summit, you can do that still. Go to smartkitchensummit.com. Use a discount code podcast to get your 15% off. We'll also have a way for you to buy sessions on the Spoon. So just go to spoon.tech, check it out in a couple of days. All right, folks, I really think you can enjoy it. So let's get to my conversation with Babette. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, my name is Babette Pepaj. I'm the founder of Bakespace.com and also the founder of the new BakeBot.ai. And I've been in the culinary space we launched Bakespace in 2006. We were the first food-themed social network to launch in 2006. At the time, there was like MySpace and you had forums, but you really didn't have anything that connected people
All
in real
recipes
time.
was there, but they were not a social network, right?
No,
they were just recipe database.
They added like their community elements much later. And it was really fun because I took a cake decorating class. I was a television producer for about 15 years. And I was on this show where I had to get one mother to tell another mother she was the worst mother in the world. And I came home and I was like, oh my God, I feel terrible. I feel like I'm like the worst person in the world. So I thought, what can I do to kind of feed my soul and bring me back from the dark side? And I took a cake decorating class and I was like, wow, I didn't even know I liked to bake. And I was like, this is like my place. First of all, I'm a sweets person. I love making things pretty, but I just really loved the community. I loved what food attracted. I loved the warmth of the community. And I was talking to some friends and we were talking about social media and what was happening. And I was like, there really isn't anything that connects people in real time around recipes. So I thought, well, I have like $5,000 in the bank. I'm just going to roll the dice. I had no tech experience. I hired a guy who was like a web designer. The site crashed every day. It was like a nightmare. And then just before we launched, chow.com was about to launch and they had a big story in the New York Post. So, this is at the time when, when you would launch, you would try to keep it quiet. And it's like, you'd put out a release and you'd say, hey, come check it out. And then it's like, we are revealing, this new product. And then when I saw their story in the New York Times, I was like, oh my gosh, like they're going to beat us. I looked at my husband, was my boyfriend at the time. And I said, well, they can't beat us if we're the first to launch. I'm like, they're launching on Tuesday.
So this is around.
This is 2006, August 2006. And I knew I knew what day they were launching because that's what the New York Times said. It was like Tuesday. So I looked at my husband and I was like, or my boyfriend, I said, we're launching on Monday and we're going to put out a release. And what I didn't realize was because they had been blanketing releases all over the country, all the food. At that time, there was a ton of food media. Every paper had a huge food section. And
back then, it was before Facebook was predominant. I mean, it was out there a little bit, people starting it. And also blogs were out there a little bit, but it was really hard to get it out there as fast as you can now, right?
Oh, now you put out like a tweet and it's like people go, it's really strange. But at the same time, now you're inundated with so much stuff on social media that to break through, it's so expensive. You have to pay for ads. You have to, you have to pay to reach your own users. Before that wasn't like that. Before you would put something out, a release out, and then somebody would see it and they would share it on a forum. That was actually our biggest break. We had people who were on the Knot, which is like the married side of the Nest, or no, it was on the Nest, which is the married side of the Knot, and they put it out to all their friends who just got married, and for like 2 months, every photo on the site, we used to have it on the homepage where you'd see all the new users that would register. It would be like wedding photo, wedding photo, wedding photo, wedding photo. And I talked to a user one day, years later, and I said, yeah, we had all these brides show up. And she goes, at first I thought it was for brides, so I almost didn't even join. And I'm like, wow, that's
Oh
amazing.
my
But it was
gosh.
so grassroots. It was, I still to this day, I still do our emails. But I would go into the forums and I would talk to all the users and I would find out like what's working, what's not working, what do you guys want to see?
So you went out on that Monday, you put out a press release and it got shared on things like the Nest, the Knot,
Well, what
and
happened was
so
with Chow, they had literally blanketed all their release to like all the food media, and now the food media was about to write about them. So instead of just writing about them, they wrote about the growing trend of food social media, and they included us. So it was like we got to. That's what a lot of startups don't realize is that it's okay to be in an environment where other people are launching a similar product
because
because
it's a
once
trend.
yeah, once people start seeing like something's going on, something's happening, it's like the reporters will then start to like build their story around like what's happening in food. And then we get to basically ride the
Uh,
wave. So it was
that's
like a lifesaver.
some marketer at this other place so I was kind of mad because you just jumped
Yeah, I
on
know.
all their markets.
And it's like we
I'm
had
just
no money, we had no users, no money, and we had no recipes because that was a place where there were recipes. They were CNET had owned them. They had a ton of employees. They had a plan, and we were like renegades. We were just like, I'm just going to build this. I have no idea if it's going to work. I'm going to throw all the cash I had into it. And I was like, let's ride this puppy. And we just kind of like held on to their horse and just like rode off into the sunset with them. So it's all, I always think about them. I'm always like, had they not launched, I don't know if we would have gone so far in the beginning. I
And
think,
congrats and good on you on seeing, hey, we need to get this out fast. And
yeah.
that's the scrappiness part of being an entrepreneur. And so you at one point did you realize was it like that week or a year or two on that, hey, this is something that's happening that's going to be big. We built something interesting here.
You know, I think my indicator of when I think I'm onto something is when I find it fun. So as
Mm,
soon as people started joining and I started chatting with them and I was like, "Oh my god, like we're talking about crazy stuff and we're making stuff and they're doing recipes." And I would see a recipe get uploaded and I'd be like, "Oh my god, what's this?" I would see members talking about, other members saying, "Hey, someone put up a recipe that doesn't look legit." Like, they started like vetting the community on behalf of us, and I was like, whoa, this is bigger than just I have a vision, I have an idea. It's like the community is now forming and people are starting to have ownership on it. So that's like really the indicator. It's like if I'm not having fun, that's why I always feel like I'm trying to innovate, because I find an opportunity and
mm,
I don't let somebody say like, no, like with AI, oh my God. You know how many times I got people saying, don't do AI with recipes because everyone wants to see reviews. So had I just listened to that, I would not even have explored like all the other things you can do in AI and food,
yeah.
not just like recipe development.
Yep. And we'll get to that. I want to talk about the idea of being an independent social community and site and how that's changed over the years because it was so different back then. I was, 2006, 2007, I got to know Om Malik and
Mm,
eventually went to work
mhm,
for GigOhm. And that was
mm,
like when TechCrunch and GigOhm were kind of at the height and like
yeah.
tech blogs in Silicon Valley were still a kind of a thing. But man, the world is so different today. So how has the world changed as you've watched it from your perch over the past, like, can you believe it's probably been it has been almost 2 decades.
Yeah. It is really
Like since the
strange.
time.
We actually tried to apply for a program recently and they're like, "Sorry, you're over 10 years old." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "We're still scrappy."
I'm not a
Uh,
young scrappy startup
yeah, yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
What?
exactly. So it's kind of hard to be like, "Yeah, our startup." In fact, I think we won the LA Weekly Best LA Startup like 8 years into building the business. I mean, it was it was actually pretty funny. I was kind of embarrassed. I was like, "Oh no," like I love LA Weekly. That's when LA Weekly was big and thick. Um, no, it's changed a lot. I mean, I remember, seeing like you just die to want to be on Mashable, TechCrunch. Like if they
Yep.
called you or they wrote something about you, you're like, "Oh, a lot of people are going to see this." now it almost feels like everyone is, even the reporters themselves, they're creating these like small ecosystems where it's like join my newsletter, pay for my content. Like
Yeah.
it's really like a strange and there's no food sections. So, you just can't put out, we just put out a release for a new product that we have about saving groceries. And I'm like, wow, it's so different to see the response of like who reaches out to you versus before people wouldn't even reach out to you. They would just write about you. They would just
Yeah.
see your release, put it out, and then you'd have like 10 stories almost instantly. And now it's like pulling teeth. You're like,
Well,
any
and you
hello.
have you've always kind of had a lot of independent creators part of your ecosystem, and 15 years ago it was food bloggers, and then you started to see the rise of YouTube and Instagrammers, and so that's really kind
Mm.
of interesting. Do you see that part of your world becoming like, how is like the world of YouTubers and Instagrammers and the video centric creators become a
Mm.
part of your world?
It's interesting. A lot of the food bloggers, like sometimes I'll just stumble upon a recipe that's like early on because I can tell by the number, the recipe number, like what year they actually submitted the recipe by how our growth was. And it'll be like recipe 10,025. And I'm like, wow, this person was posting recipes on Bakespace before they even started their blog. And now they're like a
Mm,
big time blogger. I'm like, oh my gosh, like that it's interesting to see that. Um, and I think because when we did Tech Munch, which was our traveling food blogger conference, and seeing Blog Her and a lot of these conferences that started helping these creators um, not only figure out like how to write good content, but how to actually form like a business around that. A lot of them started taking that very seriously. And then Google had so many updates, and it almost became like a race to the bottom of like, well, make your recipe have like all this backstory and all this stuff that people have to go through for Google and all this stuff that I think it burned a lot of the content creators out. And then also the people who are at home, they're having to like wade through all that just to get to the
yeah.
actual recipe, which was the invention of the jump to recipe button. Um,
Oh, thank God.
you
That's my
know,
favorite button in the world,
I
because
know.
like when sometimes you're going through 50 ads and it's
Yeah.
sometimes the same ad as you're just scrolling down a page.
Yeah.
I don't know what people are thinking.
I know.
So
I mean, I understand that they're like if they want to figure out how to monetize their
monetize. Yeah.
content, and there's I think the moment I realized that like some of the big bloggers who I was meeting over the course of a whole bunch of years, when I realized like they had like one keyword that was like their most important keyword. If they lost that, they would lose all their traffic, and I realized I'm like, oh, this is kind of like it's a shift in thinking. It's not just about the content, it's about making sure I don't lose that, chocolate chip cookie recipe name. And I think when that started happening, it started losing a little bit of its like charm of just like this
Mm,
grassroots, like I'm making a recipe because here's my friends. Um, and I think that just really burned those content creators out, and then it became, like, so many platforms for them to put their content in. So now they had
yeah.
the dilemma of, do I do I focus on where all the people are so that the brands want, because the brands just wanna go wherever your community is, you know? Is it Do I make more money creating a branded Instagram post and driving people to the brand's Instagram page or their TikTok or whatever it is? Or do I make a blog post, and do I, within my own ecosystem, am I optimized for a certain term that that brand is trying to reach? So I think it really depends on like what the creator, like what's their end goal of what's important to them, and also like their work process, because some people are great at video, some people are great at TikTok. I've tried TikTok so many times, and I'm always like, and I see what works on TikTok, and I'm like, I don't
That's not
understand.
me. Yeah.
it's
That's,
like
yeah.
it's like it's crazy.
And so much of the creators now that have make it to the big leagues, the big ones now, like the Mr. Beast of the world, they
Hmm.
are launching CPG or food related brands, are getting
Yeah.
into partnerships with restaurants, and so I'm wondering if you've seen that in kind of some of the folks that have come up to your ecosystem where they've actually started to like co develop or put their brand on products. Has that been something that's happened?
Yes, I think it started with cookbooks, and
Okay.
they started being able to brand their cookbooks and publish cookbooks based on the recipes that they had and based on collections or on themes. And that gave a lot of the content creators like real credibility because now they're on a cookbook tour. They're able to go on TV shows because now they're a cookbook author. It's not just like this is a food blogger. And the funny thing is that when bloggers first started, there was this backlash with cookbook authors that you should not trust bloggers. And it's so funny because the evolution has changed. Now it's like, well, the food bloggers don't want you to trust the AI. Like it's like this
Mhm.
evolution of, I say wherever the home cooks are happy, whatever it is that gives them joy, if it's finding a solution or getting a recipe or going onto Pinterest and seeing something that's really cool. That's really the priority, is how home cooks actually use your product, use your recipes. And it should be fun. If it starts getting not fun anymore and it's like a race, like I have to make sure
Mhm. Mhm.
whatever it is that it's, I don't know, it starts to lose the little bit of the magic.
I do want to get into talking about AI and where that's going, but I do want to ask you about your decision at some point to bring your community that's on your platform together through events. And
Mhm.
you had a pretty good journey there. It sounds like a decades long run in building events. And it has someone who has built his own events and seeing that business change over time. So talk about like the concept of Tech Munch and then that ride you rode for about a decade.
Yeah, we produced Tech Munch in 2010. I was at South by Southwest, and I ran into one of my favorite food bloggers, Nichelle from Cupcakes Take the Cake, and she was like my. It was like because I was Bakespace and she was Cupcakes Take the Cake, and we both had cupcakes in our logo. It's like we instantly were like sisters. And I said, "Hey, there's all these content creators and stuff. Like, why don't we do something like this, like South by Southwest? Why don't we do something like this?" And she's like, "Why don't you come to New York?" And I'm like, "Well, could we do that?" And she goes, "Yeah, I can help you. I know all the people there." And it was this such or I mean, I think we were at a cupcake tasting. We were somewhere where
Mm.
we decided to meet. And she's like, "You want to do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." That was in March. Our first event was that May. That's
Okay,
how
that's insane.
quickly.
Like 2 months
Yeah.
is insane.
I mean, well, we didn't know we didn't know, you
It
know.
was a simpler time, though. I don't think
Yeah,
you could
yeah,
do that
yeah.
now.
No, I mean, they weren't like, "Where's your insurance?" They basically we had a friend who was a marketing person who was like she was dating somebody who was at the Roger Smith Hotel, who was like the marketing manager there. And he's like, "Why don't you bring them here?" And so we're like, "This is great." And it was this long, narrow room. And it was just such a wonder. It was so organic and so fun. And there were no rules. It was just like the sessions start at this time. They're like 5 minutes long. Like if you don't like it, there's going to be a next session coming up. And we had like 50 speakers coming in and out the whole day. It was pretty amazing. And then that was May, and then I'm trying to think when we did our next one. Then we did it in New York. We started doing it in New York every single year because it was like, "You want to do this next year?" And everyone's like, "Yeah." And then we evolved. We did Tampa with Jeff
Mm.
Hoke, who was the Tampa Tribune food editor, and then we started evolving. We did Minneapolis; those were some great folks.
So you went
Uh,
on the road a little bit.
we
You
did
started
on the
moving
road,
it around.
yeah. And then I
And are
think in
you
one year
based
we did six.
That's a
It was
lot.
pretty
That's a
insane.
lot. And are you based in LA?
Yeah, we're based in LA.
So you did this for a while, and then obviously, like we found, and once the pandemic hit, the events business in the world changed quite dramatically. And so you don't necessarily do those now. Have you ever thought about getting back in the events business, or it's just like it's too expensive?
We just hosted, my partner and I, we just did a bake camp, which was a charity event
All right.
where we had
Yep.
local bakers create cookies, and then we raised money. We did 3 weekends in a row, and that was really fun. The problem is that it's so expensive now to produce events in terms of venues, insurance, just the tables alone in comparison to like 2019, the tables are like quadruple the price. So you start to look at the actual ticket price to see, is this even possible? Can you produce this? Because if you try to produce a food blogger conference now and you tell food bloggers it's like $300, they're going to be like, I don't think so. I've already been blogging for 10 years on my own. So the conference has to evolve to fit. It has to fit like what they're doing. Like if it's like a whole conference on like TikTok, that might do pretty well.
Yeah.
But it's really hard now, and everyone's so they're so distracted with so much stuff, and they're doing pretty well. So if I tell a blogger, hey, we can teach you how to do X, Y, and Z, they're going to be like, I already
I
know how
know
to
how to
do
do that.
that,
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, even if it's like, well, just come and meet folks and be exciting and like get inspiration. This is what keeps you
Yeah.
going. It's just really difficult now. So I was
Yeah.
testing out the food events.
I just had a conversation with someone else. I think it was Chris Young. He had a great insight in that, back in the day, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, through most of our careers, you could be at a company and your kind of secret and your reason for being there was your knowledge. And like you had very specific knowledge of a domain or a skill. And because of that, no one else had that, you could stay at that company. But now, knowledge is becoming commodified through AI. And
Hmm.
so, it's like more becoming how you can get things done. And
Yeah.
so can you build things if you just know something, like everything's there to touch a fingerprint, like a very specific domain thing, you could just query chat GPT or whatever. So, I don't know, it's kind of an interesting time, I think. And I wonder if that's, how that impacts the food world and particularly the world of recipes and food bloggers.
Well, that's when I started hearing about. I actually had my partner with Bake Camp sent me an email one day, and it was like he sent me an email that was like to a brand, and he said, "Look what it did." And I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about. And he's like, look, I just gave it a few words and it wrote this. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, ChatGPT. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. So this is like not even that long ago. And so I go to it. I'm like, what is this? And I started talking to it. And once it started giving me back things that I felt, it wasn't just trying to like say, oh, like a Google search, this is what this is, whatever. It
Yeah.
actually started inspiring me or making me think bigger or making me realize. I tried it on a couple of recipes and I was a little bit disappointed with just like creating the recipe because it wouldn't create it in a format that was like a full recipe. It would be missing something like, I don't know, it would be missing cook time or it would be missing like the
Mhm.
directions would be written weird. And I'm like, oh my God, I can see the potential here. But then I would ask it like, hey, I don't have buttermilk. Like, what can I do? And it was
Yeah.
like, oh, you can make your own buttermilk. And I'm like, what? And it's like once I started seeing that stuff and I realized I'm like, well, that is a powerful tool for a home cook to just be like, what do here's what I have. What can I
Mhm.
make? Here's what I don't have.
And we all did those early experiments with ChatGPT, and it was early on. It was a lot of bad stuff because they couldn't quite understand flavor pairings, etc.
Mhm,
It's just like
mhm.
in reality, LLMs are great emulators or kind of copycats or kind of repeating stuff, but they are starting to get much better.
Yes.
Leaps forward in terms of what you could do with ChatGPT around recipe creation is or asking for food inspiration is much better,
Oh,
which kind of
yeah,
brings us to
absolutely.
today. I mean, so it's funny because one of my good friends as well in the space, you probably know Joe Ray from Wired
Mm,
magazine, just wrote
mhm.
an article. And if you saw it saying AI is horrible at
Oh,
recipes, uh,
they all say
which I feel
that.
like,
Yeah, but you know
yeah,
what they do is
but
they test it by, like, giving it, like, 10 ingredients that don't go together, and they're like,
yeah,
"Fix this," and you're like, "What?
and
No one can
and
fix that."
and Joe is belovingly curmudgeonly anti-tech, and so, but
Oh,
I haven't read it yet. I'm going to go read it, and I'll give my response after that. But it kind of brings up the point with you: if ChatGPT is just going to continue to get better, let's talk about your BakeBot. Why did you
yeah,
decide to build an AI in your community if people will just go to ChatGPT?
sure. Well, the problem with let's see, I can okay, I was gonna say I could go into the ChatGPT chat, but my inspiration was on Pinterest, and it wasn't
Okay.
based on AI, um it was based on comments. So we have like 150,000 recipes that have been put on Bakespace by real home cooks. And I was inundated by Pinterest comments and I couldn't figure out why they wouldn't just leave the comment on the recipe. Like to the chef, hey, I don't understand. You're missing an ingredient. Something's going on because, these are real home cooks that put stuff on. So sometimes they miss things, like they'll miss an ingredient. And the chef will, and the home cook will, like another home cook will actually notice it and be like, what's going on? And I'm like, why are
Yeah,
they
you
leaving
need
the
this.
comments on Pinterest? And it was like over and over, like thousands of comments. And if you don't see that, you get overwhelmed because you're like, okay, how do I even respond?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought, wouldn't it be cool if like on the recipe pages, there could be a chat that they could just ask the question and it would like fix the recipe for them. And I was like, that's what I'm going to use AI for. I'm going to use AI to make our recipes more powerful for our visitors and also for our users. Like if I was a vegetarian for like 10 years and then I recently stopped, I recently now eat meat. And my husband in the beginning was like, don't tell anyone you're a vegetarian. You have a food community for all different
Mhm.
foodies. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I like the idea that I don't have to go to another site to find recipes that are important to me. So I thought, well, that's what AI can do. AI can take any recipe and be like, I don't have chicken. Like, what other meat can I use? I like that flavoring, but how can I change it? Or I need to make it for 15 people. Or what kind of wine pairs with this? Or how do I know if the melon that I'm going to pick for this recipe is ripe? And I thought, that's what I'm going to use AI for. I'm going to use AI to be a kitchen assistant for home cooks. And then as we started building, and we used Bakespace to test it because I wanted to test it on real recipes. I just didn't want it to be, there's a lot of recipe generators out right now where there's a lot of recipe generators out right now, and uh, they all they're doing is it's like AI is making the recipe, and then they're modifying that recipe, and then they keep modifying it, and it's like a copy of itself, the copy, 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 copy.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
thought,
yeah.
well, if I start with real recipes from real people, it's already better than they could
The
imagine.
foundation model's
Yeah,
better.
exactly. And so as we started developing it, we were testing it. And what was really cool was to understand like how people interact. Like for example, we had a user who's like, I want to know what kind of frosting goes with this cake. And just a simple thing like that. You're like, oh, the frosting is just going to be like, it's vanilla frosting. Here's a frosting. But the chat started being like, well, what are you making the cake for? And I'm going to make a wedding cake for my friend. And the AI is like, oh, really? That's great. I can help you. But how are you going to transport that cake? And she's like, I don't
Mm.
know. I haven't thought of that. So that's what AI does is it thinks ahead and says where you might have a problem and where I can help you to make sure that, it's not just,
Yeah,
do I give you the recipe?
yeah.
And so then when we saw like how cool that was and where people can upload handwritten recipes and it could digitize, the recipes for them. And it allowed me to also, we have a cookbook publishing platform on the site as well. It allowed me to upload recipes quickly. So I wasn't having to fill out the complete form. I could put all the text in and the AI knows where all the content goes. It understands ingredients versus directions and so on. But then I realized that, we've built our platform in 2006. It's like an old man who doesn't want to change, and it's not the people on the platform doesn't want to change the code, so I was
Yeah.
like, well, there's things I want to do. I want to do vision. I want to be able to point my camera at
Mhm.
the screen and
Yeah.
say, what can I cook? And my AI developer was like, we got to make BakeBot on its own. Like it has to live in an ecosystem that's for that kind of user. And I'm like, oh my God, building something new. How do I do that
But
with
you
the
have the
name?
data. You can still have
Yeah,
the data,
we
right?
do.
Like
We
you can.
imported all the recipes from Bakespace into the
Yeah.
platform too, so people can feel confident that there are real recipes there as well. And then we do have an extractor. You would actually love this. You have the ability to search any recipe on the web, and it pulls that original recipe without having to go to the site. But it gives the original recipe user, like the writer, it gives them the credit and the link. So like you can say, oh, I'm pulling this vanilla cupcake recipe. I love this. It allows you to go to their website if you want, but then it also
Mhm.
allows you to modify it too. So you can be like, well, I'm gluten. I can't do that. So, or I like it. I want it chocolate now, or I want to make it for 10, which is really fun because then now it's like a real living
Yeah.
cookbook that can go with you.
See, one of the challenges with AI is the big guys that invest billions of dollars in the infrastructure are going to have the large language models. So that's really not a race like anyone can run in. But there's lots of vertically focused offerings that we're creating on top of these platforms, like what
Mhm.
I think you're building with BakeBot. So how do you ensure that what you're creating is unique and that's
Mm.
not just something I can subscribe to OpenAI or Meta AI to, and then just generate recipes to? How are you creating that special sauce with yours?
Well, I think part of the problem is that once you create your recipe on OpenAI, it's like, well, what can you do with it? It's like it lives there in a thread. You have to search for it. You can share it now. They did have a share, but it's like, how can I actually like do something with it? Um,
Mhm.
and it's also hasn't been. It's yes, it's been kind of programmed to understand cooking, but it doesn't understand fully. Like, I shouldn't have to say, I'm creating a recipe and I need you to be a professional chef and I need you to write it in a certain way to use grams versus whatever you're using. And I need to make sure that all the ingredients are in the order that they when I cook, and I need to make sure that the directions walk me through. Like there's so many things like when you look at a real recipe, that somebody who has deep knowledge of how home cooks actually cook
Yeah.
can look at that and go, wow, like, okay, I understand how this needs to be. It's not just that it needs to be displayed. The home cook needs to be able to follow along and actually cook with it. um, I think that is really like the special sauce. It was funny, I was talking to an investor recently and he's like your biggest problem, he's like, is if ChatGPT is good enough, like I could just go there. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to try to sell you on something that you might not be interested in. But I think home cooks, like once they really start playing, like when they have a comparison and they look at it and they go, this experience here versus this experience here, like I can, with like our vision on BakeBot AI, it's like I can point my camera to my fridge and I can say, what can I make? And it will actually give me a recipe on the screen that I can then save. That's an independent piece of content. It's not just like in a thread that's buried somewhere, or it's just talking to me and it's like, well, you can make avocado toast. It literally says, I see these things you can make. What direction do you want to go in? Here's the recipe. Does this look good? Do you want to make any changes? And it's like, as a home cook, I go, that's valuable to me because it's not just telling me I
Yeah.
can make something, it's showing me how to do it. And
So
in
you
any
want to,
language.
yeah, you want to incorporate all these elements in the future. So computer vision,
We have that.
the
We have that
ability,
on
okay,
bakebot.ai now.
the ability to kind of take a picture of your fridge, and then it says, okay, she has 4 red
Uh,
peppers, she has like
It's
pickles, she has
live.
mayonnaise. Okay,
It's live video. It can actually
and
talk to
so
you in real time.
to put that together, what were the elements? What were the underlying technology elements? Because I know that you guys you
Magic.
have magic.
I have
So
an
you
AI developer who
okay,
I'll come up with like an idea, or he'll come up with something like recently they were talking about the tariffs. He was watching CNBC
Mhm.
and they said, well, if avocados are too expensive, just don't buy avocados. And he's like, well, that's not a solution. We just have to tell people which avocados they can afford that are
Yeah.
local to them. And we're like, oh, let's build something for that. So we did.
So you have this company that I think the success engine early on was this community. You had your great vision, but you had this community and you tapped in at a time when there were a lot of people who were getting online and sharing it, and you created this social recipe network. And as you said before, some of them are suspicious and like not necessarily wanting to dive into deep into the AI pool. How are you reconciling this where you have this community that has been such a big part of your success that maybe like shying away or actively kind of talking like, hey, I don't want anything to do with AI, or they're resenting the fact that you guys are building this? How are you dealing with that?
Well, what's the funny thing is that when we started, people were like, "I don't trust home cook recipes. I only want to use the New York Times." So I've already
Mm,
been through this like
yeah.
this narrative. So I think that's hilarious. Now they're like, "I only trust home cooks." But I think the real key is you have to show people how it will make their life better, whatever that is. It'll save them money. It'll answer their question with something thoughtful. I think once you get them out of the like the loop, I mean, if you just Google recipe, AI recipe, every story is about either someone tried it and they hated it for recipes, or it's just a recipe generator. And it's like you have to get them out of that mindset that even when you're a home cook, you're not creating new recipes every day. You're not, sitting there going, I want to create something from scratch because recipe development is actually quite hard. Like understanding, not just understanding what ingredients go together, but the amount of each ingredients and as you change the ingredients. So that's really like to go to culinary school and to understand that that's very tough. So once we can start getting into like how home cooks are really it can change their life. I think then they'll see it because if I just show someone and go, "Hey, point this to your fridge," and it'll tell you what you can get. They're like, their mind is completely blown away. They're like, I don't have to have that battle with in the fridge every night when I open that door and I expect to see something different, but I know it's in there. I bought the stuff. So it's like I think once you can do that and you can just say, here's what it can do, and they're not just completely bombarded with like, that's fake, that's fake. And when they try the food, that's really the key. I have an enchilada recipe that I made for some friends, and I was like, what do you guys think? And they're like, it's delicious. And I'm like, that's a computer, that's AI, that's BakeBot. So it's really funny that people will start, once they start eating it and they have good recipe experience, I think they'll feel much better.
I almost want to do this. I feel like I want to. We don't have to include this. I almost want to. You and I actively go through Joe Ray's article on Wired and just have you
Oh,
give me your feedback. Do you want to do
yes.
that?
Yeah, I would love to do
I
that.
feel like I could share my
I
screen.
haven't, I
I just
haven't,
want.
I haven't read it.
I haven't. I just saw the headline. Is literally published yesterday. But I want you and I to look through this because I want your feedback.
There was
Um,
a story recently where I actually wrote a
can you
reply,
see
and I
it?
was like,
Can
"I
you see
should
it right
put this
now?
up there." Yeah, I can. Yeah, I'm gonna make
Okay.
it bigger so I can see it, the text.
So it's so he talks about he's using
Oh,
DishGen.
DishGen. That's like my
Okay, so
that's
there. So tell me about that. Is that automatically like one bad mark against it?
oh,
He also says
no.
Chef GPT and Epicure also offer similar features.
No, you know what it is? The thing that really upsets me, I mean, I shouldn't even say upsets me because then uh I give my cards. All they do is they find 3 other articles that mention the same companies, and they just keep mentioning the same companies, like those are the only 3 companies that exist, and it's really frustrating because every time I'm like, I don't understand, like, why these 3 companies only?" And it's literally it's like the same 3 companies, same 5 companies every single time. That's what's
So
frustrating for me.
yes, let's go through it. And by the way, I love Joe. He's a good writer. So
Yeah.
I think this is good critical feedback for him. But if you go through it and he starts to talk about the problems with the experiences he's using DishGen. So he talks about how the ingredients call for a large yellow onion, thinly sliced. And he goes, shall we peel it? Cut it in half, slice it, pull to pull through the equator. And how thin is thin? It didn't say, says Joe. People who like cooking from well-written recipes would find this frustrating. What do you think of that paragraph?
You know, I think that the one reason the problem is when people cook, it's like they're blind, they don't know what the texture is, they don't know how small the pieces are, like, if you're not clear in what the person is supposed to see or smell or taste or feel, it's very difficult for somebody to, like, trust I don't know. It's I mean, it's
Well,
his personal.
one thing that comes to mind is like give it another query. If you
Yeah.
don't know, like his next paragraph says the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons fresh sage leaves chopped. He goes, do you fold up these sage leaves and smash them into your tablespoon, then chop them?
Oh,
I'm like, why didn't you ask? Like,
yeah,
you can actually ask the AI. Now, I'm
you
not saying the
can.
AI is going to give a good answer, or I don't know if yours would give a good answer,
Yes,
but like,
yes, actually it
did
would.
he give a query? Did he query it?
Well, it'll also tell you what it means, like, because sometimes you don't know. There's a great story of, Fold in the Cheese. It's that TV show where they have the hotel. I forgot what it's called, but the mom and the son don't know how to cook, and they're like, "Well, fold in the cheese," and she's like, "I don't know what that means," and he's like, "Well, how am I supposed to, like, fold it over?" So I think that is, like, a universal truth of cooking. When you read something that you have no idea what that really means, it's like you become you know, like paralyzed because you're like, I know what the word means, but I don't know what it means in cooking.
And I feel like the thing is, he's not seeing the point because the AI can go into that and explain it to
Yeah,
you in a much more detailed
yeah.
manner than Google could.
Yeah,
And so, and then
exactly.
I look at it like like an all recipes recipe, and it says something like this that I don't quite understand. I have to then go Google it on a separate screen because the all
Mm,
recipes recipe isn't going to have a lot of detail. But if you're within, and I'm not trying to like make the case that all this should be in ChatGPT or your platform or whatever, but if you're in an AI platform, you can ask, well, what does it mean
yeah,
to fold the cheese?
yeah.
So I'm just
No,
like, he's missing that
absolutely.
point, I feel like.
Yeah, and
So,
it's almost like he doesn't want it to work. He's like, "I'm just gonna go with what
well,
it says, and it's not good enough."
I do think some, and again, Joe Ray is my favorite like technology reviewer when it comes to the kitchen. So I'm not particularly picking on Joe. I do think some people who are kind of used to doing things in a more traditional way go into these types of stories with their outcome already decided.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a journey of like discovery. It's more of like a journey of like kind of bias
Proof.
confirmation.
Yeah,
It's a
I
bias
agree.
confirmation story. So I don't
Mhm.
know if that's the case. I don't want to throw Joe on the bus on the story, but like it does seem like there's some biases being confirmed here. He goes on, once I started cooking, the butter and sliced onions went into a skillet to quote, cook slowly until caramelized about 12 minutes, unquote. And he says, oh man, so many things. Are they just not feeling the stirring? What about some descriptions of things to watch for along the way so we know that we're doing right?
Well, like,
So
the
I guess
onion's
he,
gonna change colors, so it's like once it
yeah.
becomes, you know I mean, I understand that, but it's the also the problem is that this is not written it's written to give you the basics. It's not written to it doesn't know your cooking level yet. So it's like you have to tell it to either explain more or n- you already know how to cook. So you already know what that is. So I think what it is it's making assumptions of your level and assuming that if you're looking at this recipe, you know what that is. And it hopes that you'll ask it if you need more questions.
Well, we could share this, and I put you on the spot here by reviewing it. We'll put the link into it. And
Oh,
again,
he's
like
gonna hate me now. He's gonna be like,
but I will say that Joe Ray is a great writer. Like everyone should read this article. And by the way, we should all be a little bit skeptical of new technology, but I think I do see the potential of AI when it comes to recipes. There's so much potential early on, 2023, 2022, when ChatGPT came on the scene. It was bad. It's so much better now. And then you start to put together these elements in a kind of a more multimodal, I guess, multimedia experience that maybe includes like instant generation of what the meal looks like, which I think SciChef does.
mhm,
You maybe do that as well. You say you already do image recognition, then
we do.
automatically generate
Mhm,
recipes. There's all these different things you could do that were impossible before. Now, it's, in the world of today, you kind of just get version one out and then you improve upon it.
mhm,
We're seeing the
mhm.
improvement over time. And I think that it'll get there.
Well, what's great is that the models that you're using are improving. It's like you all you have to do is, like, swap them out. You just have to be like, "I wanna try, mini. I wanna try this." And then you can see what's better for your users too. And then they every time somebody comes out with a new one, the latest version gets cheaper. So it's like it's becoming financially possible, to do some of these startups. That's one of the biggest things is, like, vision is very expensive, voice is coming down, and I love the idea. My favorite part of the platform is when it gives me into it's on Bakespace and on BakeBot.ai. It gives me cook mode, but it's voice activated. So it's like I can walk over to the fridge and be like, "What do I need to get out?" I don't have to look at my screen anymore. And now that is what makes it like the AI genius and the magic of just being like, I'm not cooking
Mm.
alone anymore. I'm with somebody and it can do it in any language. So it's like if I have, there are recipes. I was shooting some promo videos. I've been using the meta glasses to shoot a whole bunch of stuff. And I was at a friend's house and I was pulling out her cookbooks and I was like, oh, I want to make this cookbook. I want to make this cookbook. And she goes, try the yellow cookbook. She's like, it's in Danish. Can it do that? And I was like, yeah, it can. So I'm like, "Hey, wh what do I make here?" And it was just so much fun to like, that whole world of everything that you've dreamed of. You get a cookbook from your grandmother, you find recipe cards that are handwritten that half of the directions are missing, or
Mm.
you go to a place and you find a cookbook that's, like, totally, has notes in it, but it's all in a different language. You're like,
Mm.
"I just
So
want this," and
So
that's what
it
AI can do.
it your augmented reality glasses from Meta would look at the Danish recipe and instantly convert it on the
No,
fly.
I use the Meta to record from the app because I
Okay.
realize I can't record and do my
Okay.
demos on the phone, so I use it to just record what's happening. so that I know
Okay.
how I can, show people like this is what it can do.
Okay.
I would love
I
to.
still
That's
feel
actually
like,
our next plan is to do glasses, like to be able to be a part of that
but we're close
ecosystem.
with that type of stuff. It's funny.
Yeah.
Louis C.K. had that great joke about how everyone's like living in this amazing world, but we're all miserable. Like we're
Oh,
flying on planes, but we're complaining. There's so many amazing things, and yet we're still complaining because it's our nature to complain. So,
that's true.
but I feel
That's
like,
true.
I mean, when I'm in Japan now, I have this instant translation machine. It was kind of like a dream watching Star Trek back when we were young.
Yeah.
Hey, you could speak with the Martians, but now you really can speak with the Martians, not the
You,
Japanese
you
people,
know,
Martians, but right? Like,
my brother's going to, I'm Albanian, and my brother's going to Albania, and he says he wants to get those glasses, and he wants to do the translation. And I said, well, you can do it on your phone, and it's like just an app, like just play it, and it'll play for you. You
yeah,
don't have to spend like $500. And he goes, no, 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 no. He's like, I don't want them to know I know what they're saying, so that if they say something about me.
oh my
And
gosh.
I'm like, what are you thinking? Like, it's so ridiculous. It's so funny. But I love
But
how we're making it work in our own world.
I see the motivation for it, but yeah, so but it is an amazing world that we live in. I love how you've evolved this community you built
Thank
20
you.
years ago into this kind of really you're always trying new things, which I think is really fun. And we can't wait to talk to you about what you're building at Smart Kitchen Summit. So thanks for coming on the show. This has been so much fun.
Thank you so much for having me. You're always a delight to talk to.
Well, that was it. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Babette, hearing about her journey creating an early social platform for recipes to her current journey creating an AI-powered recipe platform. So it was a lot of fun. We'll be back next week. You won't want to miss it because we'll have my conversation with Mark Cuban. So we'll talk to y'all soon.
If you enjoyed this episode, why not share it with a friend? And don't forget to give us a 5-star review. You'll find more content like this on thespoon.tech/podcasts.